Hello guys, this is Trinity Storm here and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to do first part of what if Naruto was bastard son of Minato. If you enjoy this video, please like, share and subscribe to the channel. Also, don't forget to follow me on my other social media handles. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
This is the story of Naruto, a young boy who grew up to become one of the most infamous men in history. Naruto's story was not a happy one in any sense of the word. From the time he could remember, his life had been nothing but misery. Allow me to recount the events that led up to his meteoric rise to fame throughout the elemental countries. Naruto was born to a civilian woman in a shinobi-dominated village in a world ruled by shinobi. Her name was Mocha, and she was Naruto's rock in life because he was bullied by many people and had no friends in Konoha. He never met his father, but his mother would always tell him that his father was a great man, but she never told him who he was, and he became increasingly curious as time passed. His mother had silver hair and red eyes, while he had blonde hair and blue eyes. While his mother appeared happy to him, he was not fooled because she cried herself to sleep nearly every night for reasons he didn't understand, but he was only 5 years old, so it was understandable. He and his mother were impoverished throughout his childhood. They had barely enough food to eat and lived in a dilapidated one-bedroom apartment. Even though they lived in such conditions, Naruto was content because he had his mother, and that was all he needed. She even read to him at night to help him sleep from his favorite book, Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi, explaining that he was named after the main character himself. She told him he was destined for greatness and that he would accomplish so much in the future that she would be proud of him. He had plans for the future to become a shinobi like the character from the book he was named after and earn enough money for them to live far better than they had been, but things never worked out the way he had hoped. He used to accompany his mother to work as a cleaning lady at a hotel on the outskirts of town, but one day she made him stay while she walked away to an unknown destination. Naruto was curious about his mother's whereabouts, so he followed her in secret. He followed her as she walked through the village and towards the clan homes. But what puzzled him was that she went to the gate of the fourth Hokage's mansion and tried to talk to him through the intercom on the gate. Naruto was too far away to hear what was said, but he saw Minato emerge from his house and yell at his mother for reasons he didn't understand. She got down on her knees and begged, but all he did was slap her across the face and lock the gate behind him, leaving her there in tears. Whatever he said to her that day shattered her to the point where she never recovered. Naruto spent the next week and a half attempting to cheer up his mother, who refused to leave her bed and sobbed uncontrollably. It broke Naruto's heart to see her like this, and he did everything he could to make her smile. But after those 2 weeks, she had died, leaving Naruto alone in the world. The village buried her in the cemetery, but only Naruto was there to see her buried, tears welling up in his eyes. He returned home and broke down in tears because he had nothing left. He became enraged and began to tear up the place in a fit of rage. He even punched the wall, punching through a thin hollowed-out section of it. Inside was his mother's diary, and as he discovered it, he sobbed again because it was the only thing he had left of his mother. She had sold almost everything else she owned in order to feed the two of them. He eventually read the words written in his mother's diary, and as he did, his entire world turned upside down. His mother was born into the second wealthiest family in Fire Country, but she had been defiant to how they wanted her to be. She was being groomed to marry the Fire Daimyo's cousin, but she didn't want to be a wife to a man she didn't love. There was an incident in which she was kidnapped by a roving bandit group while on her way to the capital to meet with her future husband. It was at this point that she was saved by Minato, a chunin at the time. She was grateful for his rescue, and a secret relationship began as a result. She eventually ran away from home to be with him in secret because she didn't want to marry a man twice her age, and her family disowned her for abandoning them. While she had done it out of love for the man who had saved her life and fallen in love with her, Minato had done it out of greed. He had known she was wealthy and desired the money for himself. He had been with her in secret until Naruto was born. But when he tried to use this as a means of legally claiming a portion of her family's money for himself, he discovered that she had been disowned and it had all been for naught. It wasn't really his problem because he had married Kushina Uzumaki and had a child with her 6 months before Naruto was born. Mocha had spent most of her life as a noblewoman, so working to support her son and herself was difficult. She had returned home and begged her family for help, but they simply turned their backs on her and told her to suffer alone before forcibly removing her from the property. She worked herself to the bone to provide for her son, but the pressure eventually got to her, and she went to the home of the man who essentially ruined her life and demanded help for the child he sired. He had had enough that day and slapped her and told her to stay away from his family or he would kill both her and Naruto if she returned. These were the last events recorded in the diary before it was closed, and Naruto felt pure hatred and fury for the first time in his life. He survived the next 2 years by dumpster diving for food and clothing scraps to sew his own clothes. All the children from clans who thought they were better than everyone bullied and ridiculed him for his appearance. But, of all the children from clans, Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, the daughter of the 4th Hokage and his half-sister, enraged him the most. She targeted him the most, and while he knew the truth about their relationship, she didn't care. Naruto made a vow to himself to become a far more infamous shinobi than Minato ever was, in order to ruin his mother's reputation. But when he turned 8 and tried to enter the academy, he was turned down several times for reasons he didn't understand. Minato didn't want him anywhere near his daughter and had personally signed the paperwork to deny him entry to the academy at any time. He did so out of fear that if Naruto ever found out about their relationship, he would try to attack Naruto if he could. To be honest, Naruto had planned to do exactly that, but he never got the chance. This broke Naruto even further, and it was at this point that he realized he would never make it in this village, so he packed his belongings and fled the village in the middle of the night through the forest of death. When he set up camp for the night in a hollow tree, he stepped outside to take a quick piss before falling asleep, and his luck finally changed. And it was at this point that a fruit landed on his head from nowhere. It was a strawberry-looking red heart-shaped fruit. It had a stem with a swirling end pointing upwards and a swirling pattern on its surface. He ate the fruit whole because it was small enough to hold in his hand and he was not one to look a gift horse in the mouth. He immediately regretted it because it was the worst thing he had ever tasted in his life. After eating it, he felt queasy, so he went to his makeshift bed and fell asleep to try to sleep it off. And as he slept, he was unaware of the changes his body was undergoing. He quickly packed his belongings and set out for a new life in the morning, but he was attacked by a pack of wolves not long after. He drew his kunai to defend himself, and as he did so, they all charged in to rip him apart, but just as everything seemed lost for the boy, he tapped into his unknown power on instinct alone. With a clear dome of energy surrounding him in the wolves, Naruto was able to kill at least half of the wolves by cutting them to pieces. But, strangely, they weren't necessarily dead because, despite being cut to pieces, they were still alive and moving around. Naruto eventually suffered several massive wounds, but considering he was an 8-year-old with no training, the fact that he had survived this long was impressive and spoke volumes about his future. He dropped to his knees, tears in his eyes, and used his hand to stop the flow of blood from his shoulder wound. To him, it appeared that the world was cruel and about to kill him right now, with these wolves as the instrument of his death, but as he knelt there, the anger within him grew, and with it came a forgotten power thought lost to time, ready to be unleashed upon the world once more. As the wolves attacked again, Naruto screamed in rage, but they only got halfway to him before collapsing onto the ground, foam pouring from their mouths. Naruto looked on in surprise, unsure of what had just happened, but he then smiled because he knew he had a gift unlike anything else he had ever seen, but if he wanted to train with it, he would have to survive his wounds now, and it seemed like that wasn't going to happen because he was losing too much blood. He walked slowly for several minutes before collapsing and passing out from blood loss, unaware that a man had sensed and was interested in his power. He tracked down the person who wielded such power and saw that the boy was in desperate need of medical attention, so he picked him up and drove him to the hospital. He took Naruto to a man he knew had medical training, but the boy required a blood transfusion. The blood transfusion itself was not an issue. Rather, he was lacking in the specific blood required for Naruto, so the man offered his own in exchange because the doctor had used up what little he had on Naruto. So he connected the equipment and performed the transfusion without incident. Naruto awoke a little later and immediately became defensive because he was in a strange place with a stranger looking over him. The man calmed him down by waving his hands in a comical manner and introducing himself as Faust, a sort of doctor. Faust's associate appeared and informed Naruto that while Faust was a doctor, he was the one who assisted him. Faust went on to explain that he stopped being a doctor after losing a little girl as a patient many years ago and had traveled the world in search of a purpose. He had come across the child by chance, felt sorry for him, and decided to assist him. Faust offered to take Naruto home if he so desired, but Naruto simply stated that he did not have a home and explained what had occurred in his life. Faust took pity on him once more and offered to teach him the ways of a doctor such as himself, because now that Faust's blood flowed through his veins, he had some of his abilities such as conjuring up the door that led to his interdimensional operating room and conjuring of items in his possession as well as storing them away for later. Naruto accepted the offer and began his apprenticeship as a Faust's apprentice. Faust taught him how to use his own power through experiments in which Naruto wanted to take part. He learned a lot about the powers he gained from the fruit he ate, and he discovered that it was only with that power that he was able to outperform even Faust in his field of expertise. He'd also discovered that the doctor's blood had endowed him with a bloodline that allowed him to control blood in various ways, which he used more for medical purposes than fighting. Naruto was 13 years old when Faust finally left him to face the world on his own, and he thanked him for everything he had learned. So he traveled around the elemental countries to make a name for himself, and he was successful. During his travels, he helped many people by healing illnesses that others thought were incurable. He was given the nickname, the Miracle Worker, at first, but that quickly changed when a group of missing nin arrived to force him to heal one of their associates. Naruto was not one to do things for free, so he asked them to pay a fee if they wanted his assistance. They tried to force Naruto to do what they wanted, but he simply smirked and slaughtered them all mercilessly. Naruto had a slew of tricks up his sleeve, many of which he hadn't used yet because he didn't need to. In a fight, he used two different weapons. Naruto's primary weapons are a pair of extremely long razor wires attached to gloves that he controls as if they were extensions of his own body. The wires are sharp enough to sever steel and concrete, but he can also use them to bind and restrain targets without harming them. He can move objects without damaging them, using enough force to rip or grab a packet of cigarettes that he started smoking because they calmed his nerves, and a surgeon must be calm to perform surgeries like the ones he did on occasion. He was also able to keep several of the wires between his teeth without causing himself any harm. The wires themselves can be used to attack from almost any direction and appear to hover around Naruto in an omnidirectional manner during combat. He could cause drastic shifts in their positions with extremely small movements, and even manipulate them without any visible movement. The wires move much faster than Naruto and are extremely difficult to see with the naked eye. He could also detach wires from his control, allowing them to suspend people in midair while not attached to his gloves. He also demonstrated the ability to have the wires encircle him while walking around without coming into contact with them. The wires could be seen spanning at least the width of a typical skyscraper. Even Naruto was unaware of the limit to the number of wires he could summon. He used a second weapon effectively the second time. This was a cane he had that could be extended to his own height and had a skull on the tip with its mouth open. When he was 10, he had a weaponsmith in Iron Country make him this cane. The metal had come from a meteor and had been collected by a merchant who recognized its value. Naruto had gone to the merchant for a few herbs grown by the merchant's wife so he could work on various antitoxins, but when he saw the metal, he knew he could use it to make something cool. However, the price was far too high, and he lacked the funds to pay for it, so he took the herbs he came for and left. A few months later, however, the merchant's wife became ill, and the town's doctor informed him that there was no cure for her condition. When Naruto returned for his weekly batch of herbs, he noticed the man had fallen into a deep depression. Naruto easily healed his wife for free because they had been so kind to him over the years, and he helped friends when they needed it. The man was so grateful for Naruto's healing that he gave Naruto the Meteor's medal as a gift. Once in his possession, he had it fashioned into the staff he now wields. The staff was only a part of his weapon because he used the bloodline he gained from his blood transfusion to transform his cane into various weapons like spears, axes, or his personal favorite, scythes. As a result of his ability to heal, he was also able to kill mercilessly, earning him the moniker, Surgeon of Death. His name became infamous in all 5 major villages, and each of them sought him out in an attempt to recruit him to their villages, but he was extremely elusive when he desired to be. Iwa was the only village he had ever visited since becoming the way he was. And the reason he went there was because he saved Onoki's and his granddaughter's lives. They were ambushed by root shinobi who had come to breed Kuretsuchi's bloodline, and they poisoned Onoki to weaken him and would have succeeded if Naruto hadn't intervened. He killed them all before taking Onoki into his interdimensional operating room to remove the poison from his system. While he was there, he used his power to repair several cracks in his spine, allowing him to be pain-free. After all was said and done, Onoki expressed gratitude for his assistance and invited him to join their village. Naruto had graciously declined, explaining that as a surgeon, he needed to be free to assist those in need. So, even though he was not an official shinobi of their village, the people treated him as such because he visited frequently to help those in need. He was completely unconcerned about Kuretsuchi's stares. Naruto eventually came across a group of missing nin on the run from their own village, with whom he traveled. And while they were traveling, he healed them of their various wounds. These people became his family, with the female member of the group becoming his girlfriend after he saved her from being raped after she was kidnapped by Hunter Nin. After a while, Naruto left to take on another job, while the others went to Wave to finish theirs. He'd been called in to treat a famous actress after a fan shot her in the neck with a poisonous senbon. He operated on her and easily extracted the poison, but in order to do so, he had to use his power to keep her alive long enough to extract all of her blood down to the last drop and infuse her with more so she wouldn't die. He did this to eliminate the possibility of the poison remaining in her system. There was also the added benefit of being able to identify the poison and produce an antitoxin for it. While she was sleeping it off to recover from the operation, her manager approached him and explained that she had been poisoned by an agent of her uncle who had been sent to kill her so that she could not take her rightful place on the throne as daimyo of Snow Country. He offered him even more to help him bring her safely home and protect them from harm as a bodyguard. He agreed, but only on the condition that he and his group be granted citizenship because they had no place to call home and were tired of running. Naruto agreed to the terms, and he became Koyuki's bodyguard. They were attacked by her uncle Doto and his shinobi, who were easily dispatched by Naruto. Doto had tried to use this as a distraction to quickly grab Koyuki and flee, but Naruto easily cut the cable connecting his grappling hook that he had used before grabbing it midair and dropped it because even though the cable was cut, it was still flying through the air at such a fast pace that it was still dangerous. Doto had tried to kill them all with the kunai launchers in his train, but Naruto used the wires in his gloves to create a protective web that shielded them all. Doto then tried to flee in his airship, but Naruto cut it up with his wires once more. Doto fell from the wreckage, became entangled in the wires, and was held in midair. Once there, he used a seal he created to siphon the blood of anyone he placed it on, because it was a waste to kill someone when you could get so much life-saving blood out of them before they died. Naruto led the group he was with towards the machine her father built to turn the land of snow into the land of spring after he was killed due to a lack of blood. And, as agreed, he was made a citizen, complete with 4 scrolls that granted his friends the same rights as him. As he walked away, the newly appointed Koyuki kissed him on the cheek. He then packed some supplies and traveled to Wave to meet up with his group, and it is here that the story begins. Wave Country, Incomplete Bridge. Kakashi was out of breath after his fight with the missing nin Zabuza, and as he made a mental note to increase his training when he returned to the leaf, and looked around in the mist for Zabuza because the man had summoned it with a jutsu so he could hide within it. His Sharingan had failed the Junin for the first time in Kakashi's recent memory, as he couldn't detect Zabuza due to the climate he was in, and he was worried about his students losing to Zabuza's apprentice. This fog is thicker than it was the last time we fought. He's hiding in it, waiting for me to make a mistake so he can chop me in half with that sword of his, Kakashi thought as he had to use his other senses to keep up with the Demon of the Mist while also making sure his students were safe. Naruto and Sasuke were currently fighting Haku, while Sakura stayed with Tazuna to ensure he had some form of protection if Zabuza approached him. However, given Sakura's lack of skills, the missing nin could easily track her down and then take care of the client in an instant. With a swing from behind, Zabuza attempted to slice him in half. Kakashi used this opportunity to perform a substitution and appeared behind him to avoid it. While he fought the Demon of the Mist, Naruto and Sasuke were suffering from Haku's ice bloodline. She'd suffocated them with hundreds of ice senbon. This enraged the two of them because they had been brainwashed by their parents, Minato for Naruto and Makoto, the only Uchiha to survive the massacre aside from Sasuke, into believing that they were the best, and yet this bitch was outperforming them. Naruto had to summon the Kyuubi's power to finally shatter her ice mirrors and pin this bitch to the ground. While the first part worked, the second did not because it was an ice clone that shattered into even more ice senbon upon contact. These struck her nerves, paralyzing her. Sasuke used his newly awakened Sharingan to find her and then used a fire jutsu to force her out of hiding before slamming her hard into the ground. "You are fairly strong," Sasuke said as he held her there, "and I believe I'll take you back to my village to assist me in restoring my clan." "My boyfriend is going to kill you for even thinking that," Haku said, scowling and glaring at her. "Well, it's too bad your boyfriend isn't here," Sasuke said, his face sinister, "because once I have a Yamanaka digs through your mind and changes your mind by force, you'll forget about your pathetic boyfriend and know how it feels to be with a real man. Would you mind repeating that, you son of a bitch?" said a voice behind him before the person who said it smacked him across the head with a golf swing. Someone grabbed Haku's hand and helped her back to her feet. As she did so, she drew the person into a kiss by the shirt. "What have you been up to?" Haku inquired, a grin on her face. "The job I took lasted longer than expected," the figure said as he returned her smile, "but why are you complaining? When I kept you waiting, I assumed you liked it." When she heard this, Haku flushed. The individual was dressed simply in a black suit with a white shirt underneath, short black gloves with a skull painted on them, and gray steel-toed shoes. He wore a pair of black trousers that were held up by two red belts. He finished the look with a black fedora hat that sat atop his blonde hair and hid his shady face. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll finish the job you told me you didn't need help with in the first place." "The job was supposed to be simple," Haku said, his face flushed, "but we didn't expect to face a Namikaze alongside Kakashi, the fourth Hokage's student. Things went downhill quickly after they killed the other two. You know, I was about to ask where they were when you just answered my question." "I don't know who the fuck you think you are," Sasuke raged after being struck from behind, "but I will kill you." "Sharingan huh," Naruto said, raising an eyebrow, "so you must Sasuke Uchiha. How the hell do you know who I am?" Sasuke wondered, "Has my name already become that famous?" "No," Naruto said simply, shaking his head, "I just heard your name through the mouth of your older brother Itachi." "Where is Itachi?" screamed Sasuke. "Oh, you are so easily angered," Naruto smirked, "and to think your brother honestly thought you would be the one to avenge him." "Wait. What?" asked Sasuke, his face surprised. "Your brother, you see, belonged to the Akatsuki, a group of S-ranked shinobi. They sought me out to recruit me into their group as my name became more well-known. To cut a long story short, they do not take rejection well and attempted to murder me. And, as you can see, they failed miserably. There is no way you could have killed Itachi. Then where did I get his eyes?" Naruto wondered as his eyes transformed into the Mangekyo Sharingan that had once belonged to Itachi Uchiha. Naruto had begun to wonder over the years if other bloodlines could be transferred like the one he had received when he received his blood abilities from a blood transfusion. He tried and eventually succeeded with a few of them. He also managed to splice his own eyes with Itachi's genetics for his Sharingan, allowing him to notice far more in his operations than he was previously capable of. "You bastard!" yelled Sasuke as he charged forward with a kunai to dispatch him. Haku yelled at him to move, but Naruto simply refused. The kunai slashed through his chest and into his heart, or where his heart should have been. "At least you know your vital areas," Naruto said, pulling Sasuke's arm from his chest while still holding the kunai. He then kicked him in the chest hard enough to send him flying backwards and to his knees in pain. "How are you still alive?" was Sasuke's perplexed question. For Christ's sake, he had stabbed him in the heart. "While it is true that you stabbed me in the right spot," Naruto said as he extended his left hand. It was a clear cube with a still beating heart inside it. But there was one problem. My heart wasn't there to be stabbed through. He then pulsed energy through his hand, and it vanished and returned to its proper place. He twitched his fingers slightly, causing his wires to grab hold of his limbs and hold him in place. "What the hell is this?" asked Sasuke, struggling to move but failing, "and who the hell are you?" "Hold that thought for a second," Naruto said, clicking his fingers, "Room." As he spoke, an energy dome arose, encircling the immediate area. Shambles. He switched places with Zabuza, who had been captured by 2 ninja dog summons and was about to be killed by Kakashi with a Raikari to the chest. But now he was in the place of Naruto, who simply held up his staff in response to the attack. Kakashi ended up hitting the skull on the end, and as he did so, blood covered his hand and solidified, preventing him from breaking free. He then twisted his cane to the left, breaking a bone in his body and rendering his arm useless for the time being. He then swung him around and released him at an angle, causing him to fly through the air and crash into Sakura. "Are you okay, Zabuza?" Naruto asked, placing his cane on his shoulder. "Yeah kid," Zabuza said as he stood up and brushed off the dirt on him. Naruto simply strolled over to where they were. "I'm glad I wasn't too late to save you too. But what exactly is the task at hand?" "We were hired to assassinate the bridge builder over there," Zabuza explained, pointing to the elderly man who was literally shaking in his shoes from fear. Naruto, on the other hand, was not surprised because he had defeated the man's hired help. "Allow me to finish this so we can get paid and leave right away." "Stay away from him," Sasuke said as he struggled to free himself from the wires that bound him. "Oh right," Naruto said, looking at Sasuke, "then there's you. There are many things I can easily forgive, but stating that you were going to rape my girlfriend in order to bear your bastard children is literally the dumbest thing you could say to her or me. So, while I could easily kill you right now, I have something far worse in mind." Broom. Naruto then took out a vial of blood that he had broken in his hand and formed the pool of blood into 2 small spike balls. The spike balls were then replaced with 2 grayish ovals in his hand with a sleight of hand. "You see these, Sasuke," Naruto said with a grin, "these are your testicles that I just replaced with spike balls. So good luck trying to reproduce when you don't have any testicles to produce sperm." He then kicked Sasuke in the crotch, causing him excruciating pain from which he cried out. He kicked him, and the wires that held him in place loosened, sending him backwards. He clutched his crotch area, which was now heavily bleeding from the spikes inside him. "And now that that's done, let's call it quits for good." Naruto activated his Sharingan and used another blood vial to shape the sharp tip of his cane into a spear. He charged forward with a sudden burst of speed to kill Tizuna, but just as he was about to kill him, Naruto stopped. "It's your lucky day, old man, because you get to live another day." Naruto then twirled his cane, causing the blood at the tip to fly into the air, but he caught it with another vial, though this one was empty. "Why did you stop?" Tizuna inquired, surprised because he wasn't sure if this was a trick or not. "Because it appears that our employer has seen fit to betray us for some reason," Naruto explained as he walked away, but he came to a halt after a few seconds. You should also limit your drinking because your kidney is about to fail. So, for the next month, take one of these and you'll be fine. Naruto said this as he pulled out a small bag of pills and tossed it to Tazuna, who caught them while still looking shocked. How did you? Tazuna began before Naruto interrupted him. Trust me, I'm a doctor, Naruto said with a smile on his face. Naruto quickly rejoined his companions, who were taken aback when Gato appeared, surrounded by an army of hired thugs. Ha! So the big bad demon of the mist has been defeated by a slew of Konoha shinobi, the majority of whom are brats. I should have realized your reputation didn't match your abilities. Zabuza, you're all hype. A little baby demon who believes he has the biggest stick to swing from, Gato had appeared with his army of bandits behind him, all eager for a fight to earn their money. He noticed Zabuza and his assistant were out of breath and covered in wounds. Sure, there were others who had been defeated as well, but with one still fighting, it appeared that they had failed in the job that he had hired them to do. Gato. So you were planning to defraud us? The rumors were correct, snarled Zabuza, recalling what Haku had told him about the various rumors she had overheard about him backstabbing people in order to avoid paying them. Zabuza had assumed that they would be able to easily overcome this because they were strong and the job was supposed to be easy after all, but unexpected events occurred, and he was not in the best condition to fend off so many people at once. What does it matter if they are? Ninja are not cheap. I shouldn't have to pay for a few of you when buying in bulk, and for a lower price is a far better investment. Especially if the ninjas in question are too weak to fight back against my boys here and too stupid to see a trap when it's right in front of them. Furthermore, a missing nin like yourself is a liability, and the fact that you came to me for a job was a mistake on your part, Gato countered with a smile while looking at Haku's weakened form. Not as bad as yours. I fear, Naruto replied, the mist having cleared completely since Zabuza had stopped it as Naruto walked ahead of the two of them. Who are you? Gato inquired, while Naruto calmly twirled his cane with one hand. Me? Gato, my attire certainly speaks for itself. I am fairly well known in most countries, Naruto responded, Gato's eyes narrowing before widening in shock and then laughing at him. So a punk kid like you is the infamous Surgeon of Death? Gato wondered as he and his men laughed. Well, it's good that you're all laughing, Naruto said with a sinister grin, because they say laughter is the best medicine. But I believe I have a far superior solution. Naruto then took out a large vial the size of a softball that was filled with his own blood. The bottle was then thrown into the air by him. The vial shattered from a wire with a glint of light, and the blood within rained down on the crowd. Once there, the thugs attempted to wipe it away, but blood is difficult to remove without water or something similar. Naruto then clapped his hands together and then pulled them apart, ripping the blood from the thugs' bodies, but Gato was still alive in the midst of all the carnage. He shaped the blood into a cage that surrounded him, preventing him from fleeing his fate. Naruto had trained and experimented with his abilities, and he had discovered that with the right amount of his own blood, which was not much, he could infect his opponent and control the blood within them to do crazy things like what he did. He usually only did this to the most rotten people because it was so gruesome, and Gato and his thugs fit the bill perfectly. I'm going to say this one time and one time only, Zabuza said, feeling a little jealous because he was supposed to be the Demon of Mist and this guy had just outdone his gruesome kills to graduate from his class. You are one frightening motherfucker. I try not to be, Naruto said with a sidelong smile, but to people like this, I have to make a statement. Please, Gato begged, terrified of death, I have plenty of money. Simply name your price for not killing me. Name my price, huh, thought Naruto, how much do you have on you? Gato shook his head and pulled out his wallet, revealing around 20,000 he kept on his person at all times. Naruto simply grinned as he activated his room and took the money from his hand. Well, this is your lucky day, Naruto said as he pocketed the money after counting it, because this is enough to keep me from killing you. Gato breathed a sigh of relief when he heard that, but was taken aback when he saw Naruto with a heart in his hands. He then threw it at Zabuza. Death to him. Wait. Gato exclaimed in surprise, you said you wouldn't kill me. And I am a man of my word, Naruto said as he walked away, Zabuza will do it. Then Zabuza drew a kunai and stabbed the heart. Gato clutched his chest in agony as his heart bled out and died with a pained expression on his face. Naruto then returned to Tazuna and handed him the money he had been given. I believe you are entitled to some of this. Why are you assisting me in this manner? Because I'm a doctor and I like to help people, Naruto explained with a shrug of his shoulders. Gato was a cancer on this land, and like any good doctor, I removed it so that the body that is this land could heal in its own time. But I'm serious about reducing my alcohol consumption. Naruto turned to face Zabuza and his group, but was stopped by Tazuna's call. Wait. What is your given name? My name is Naruto, the Surgeon of Death. Naruto continued to walk forward. He handed the scrolls that had been given to him to Zabuza and Haku. They smiled as they read the contents. Haku kissed Naruto because he had kept his promise to her of finding them a place to finally settle down so they would no longer be on the run. When they turned to leave, their path was blocked by Kakashi, Naruto, and Sakura, who was shaking in fear. You have harmed the heir of a prestigious Konoha clan, Kakashi explained as he pulled out his Sharingan, so you will come with us to face trial for your crimes. Do you really think I care that the son of a bitch is from a clan? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow, because when someone threatens to rape my girlfriend, I don't give a damn. You will come with us regardless. Raged Naruto. She was not about to let the woman who had paralyzed her get away like this. While she would normally be opposed to such a thing, her pride overcame her feminine pride and she desired to see her suffer as a result of her transaction. Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze, Naruto said, his teeth clenched and his fists tight. Dear sister, we meet again. Sister, Naruto asked, perplexed because she had no siblings, what are you talking about? Ask our father, said Naruto as he glared at her. While he wanted to hurt her to send a message to his bastard father, his friend and girlfriend needed a quick checkup to make sure they were fine. So he summoned up the doorway to his interdimensional operating room and opened it up so they could go inside. Until next we meet bitcha, and with that he slammed the door shut behind him and it disappeared right when Kakashi has rushed forward to open the door. They all had looks of confusion on their faces, and this was the scene that the people of Wave arrived to once they had gathered to fight Gato and his Mina. As the door to his interdimensional operating room vanished, Naruto could only smirk to himself. He hadn't expected to see his half-sister so soon, but he was glad he did because he had planted doubts in her mind about their shared father. While it was true that she would simply push what he said to her aside and forget about it, he knew that there would always be that nagging doubt that would come back to haunt her in time. But those were thoughts for later because he needed to check on his friend and girlfriend to make sure they were okay. Haku had a few bruises, but he had a Krami that easily removed them. He'd been working on the formula for a long time because he had so many from his medical training and experiments on himself. He was lucky to have gotten the power he did from what he later discovered was cursed fruit, because the experiments he performed on himself would have killed him multiple times over if a normal doctor had done them. So, after much trial and error, he developed this Krami that could completely heal any and all bruising within minutes of application. Naruto kissed her on the cheek tenderly, causing her to blush slightly before grabbing his head and moving it into position so she could kiss him on the lips. As Zabuza noticed this, he began to silently growl. Haku was, in all but name, his adopted daughter, even though he would never admit it to anyone because he had a reputation as a scary-ass sword-wielding shinobi to uphold, and any form of lovey-dovey nonsense would all but ruin, if not completely shatter, that image. He intended to make it official as soon as he was able, but like any father, he was picky about who his daughter dated. While he had planned to make Naruto, or any other boy for that matter, fight for the right to date Haku in order to demonstrate that they were strong enough to protect her, he was never able to do so because when he objected to their relationship, Naruto did not take his interference well. Naruto had used his power to decapitate him and had literally shoved his head up his ass and left it there for a while. Haku had burst into tears as she saw her father figure running around like a headless chicken, trying to figure out what the hell was going on with him, because it was honestly the funniest thing she had ever seen in her entire life. Naruto laughed as well, leaving the man like that for about 20 minutes before repairing the damage. After Naruto had calmed down, Zabuza looked at him in terror. To cut a long story short, Zabuza never expressed his feelings about their relationship again after that because he didn't want that to happen to him again. Zabuza's wounds were more severe because he had a few broken ribs that needed to be repaired. Sure, they would heal on their own, but he was able to precisely cut open his chest and pull out the broken ribs with his power. Despite the fact that this was not their first time under the knife, Zabuza, at least, had never sustained a wound that required such a procedure because most of what she had received was a few stabs that Naruto stitched up and used medical chakra to eliminate any scarring, so there was no indication that the wound had been there. Even though they'd seen it before, it was still shocking to say the least because it wasn't natural. But, on the other hand, neither is spitting out entire tidal waves or conjuring ice like Haku can. Naruto cut the ribs that needed to be repaired into pieces with his wires. He soaked them in a calcium-rich paste he used to repair bones and reassembled them back to how they were before he used chakra to make them whole again. When they were fully formed, Naruto stabbed them back into their proper place, sewed the wound shut, and used his salve to remove the scars. Zabuza remembered the first time Naruto operated on him because he had so many scars that Naruto had easily removed. "Alright," Naruto said as he removed his gloves and placed them in a container with a strong disinfecting solution to clean them. He put them in for a minute before taking them out and putting them back on. After all, he was a surgeon, so he kept his workspace and equipment clean and sanitized for future use. It was one of the first things Faust taught him, and the lesson stuck quickly. The operation room was fairly large, 4 times larger than a standard hospital, with 2 side rooms connected to the main one by their own doors. The main room contained the operating table, as well as the tools he required and various medical equipment to aid in surgery. One of the doors was a thick metallic one that led into the freezer where he kept all of the blood he had collected for transfusions, all sorted by type of course. The other was simply wooden, and it led into his personal laboratory, where he conducted and documented his successful and unsuccessful experiments. This room was the same size as the operating room, but it was more cluttered, with various tubes and jars strewn about. "Shall we go back out now that you've all been checked out?" "So enlighten me as to where exactly we're going," Zabuza asked as he stood up and stretched to loosen his muscles. Getting cut open like that stiffened his muscles, so he needed to loosen up. "Ah yes," Naruto said, putting his hands behind his back and pulling out 2 of the 4 scrolls given to him by Koyuki not long ago. "I gained favor with the newly instated daimyo of the now named Spring Country while I was doing my own mission that I was hired to do." "Where is Spring Country?" Zabuza inquired with a raised eyebrow, or at least the raised area where the eyebrow was usually located, as he lacked one. "Ah yes," Naruto chuckled, "a good story, a long one, but a machine was built to eliminate the snow." "I thought you mentioned it was a long story." "Oh, it is," Naruto said, pulling out his cane and smacking Zabuza on the top of the head with it. Zabuza rubbed the top of his head, muttering something about being treated like a child there. "But I just wanted to simplify it in case you didn't want me to explain it completely." "I'm actually curious," Haku said as she sat in a chair she had pulled out. "Would that explain how you acquired 2 fully functional Sharingan?" "Wait," Zabuza said, holding up his hand to prevent them from continuing the story, "you have Sharingan now?" "That I do," Naruto smirked, his eyes changing to reveal that he did indeed have them. "Are you still interested in my story?" "Very much so," Zabuza said as he leaned his blade against the wall and sat himself, "because from what I heard, there are only 2 Uchiha left in the world with such eyes, as well as Kakashi who has one, but he is still alive and you have 2, so that eliminates him, and that Uchiha brat is still alive, so that leaves only 1 person." So, how exactly did you manage to kill Itachi Uchiha? With pleasure, Naruto smiled as he began to tell his story. Snow Country was 1 week earlier. Naruto stood guard on the ship that housed him, a film crew, and the person he had been hired to protect. She had been a handful when they first met, as she had tried to flee several times, but Naruto had simply been there to cut her off every time she tried to flee. Koyuki eventually gave up and became irritated that she couldn't escape him. He invited her to a nearby bar and purchased drinks for both of them. Koyuki became more open about her situation and explained why she didn't want to return home once she started drinking. She had lost her father when her uncle assassinated him in order to seize control of the country, and she had escaped with the help of a shinobi hired to get her out of the country to safety, becoming an actress over the years. She didn't want to go back because she was afraid she would meet the same fate as her father. Because they were in the mood to talk openly, Naruto told her about his own past. He explained how he was born into nothing, but he was truly happy because he had his mother in his life to help him cope with the cruelty of the world, but he had lost her when he was 5, and he suffered from bullying and ridicule twice as much as he did when she was still alive, and to make matters worse, there was no one else to help him get over it. He stated that he did what he did by assisting others so that no one else had to go through the same ordeal. He even stated that if he could, he would give up his power, everything he owned, and become as poor as he was in his youth in order to bring her back. But that was not an option, so he made his mother proud by assisting others. Koyuki took his words to heart and agreed that she needed to return and help those in need, but she was still afraid of her uncle because he had so many people under his command who would kill her without remorse on his command. Naruto simply smiled at her and patted her on the shoulder, stating that this was the reason he was there, as having someone of his abilities would be more than sufficient. They had one more drink before leaving, this time with the bartender because Naruto insisted, and once finished, Naruto paid the bill and they left. Naruto didn't tell either of them that he had poisoned the bartender's drink before drinking it. The poison was slow but lethal because it was a special one he had created and thus he was the only one who knew how to counteract it. The reason for this was because Naruto was well aware that the man had been secretly hired by Doto to poison her. Naruto had been well aware of the fact since he tasted it after drinking it. He spiked her drink with the appropriate antidote so they could drink in peace because it was good for them in the end. And as they turned to return to the rest of their party, Naruto was clearly aware of a pair of men quietly following them in black robes with red clouds on them. So here they were now, as Koyuki slept in her room to prepare for the morning shoot. They were on their way back to the palace so she could reclaim her rightful place as daimyo of the country, but they were also filming a movie on the way. Naruto stood guard in front of her door, his little black book open and writing in it. He had two, one for writing down ideas for later use because it was easy to forget things, and the other was his appointment book because he was frequently requested. The issue was that he needed to gather various materials in order to treat people. His powers could not heal on their own, but they did allow him to easily reach the affected areas and heal them. He still needed the proper materials. Fortunately for him, he had people from whom he obtained his materials and paid a lot of money for their best, which they gladly gave him because he was willing to pay top dollar for them. Koyuki and her manager were concerned about him because he was keeping himself awake with no sleep, but Naruto showed them a pill he created that counteracted the negative effects of sleep deprivation. He made it because there were days when he wanted to finish his research but drowsiness set in and he had to stop, but not on his own volition. So, while Koyuki slept peacefully, safe in the knowledge that Naruto was watching over her, he finished what he was drawing and closed his book before storing it away for later. He took out a special seal made of ink mixed with his own blood and used several of them to close the door he was guarding. While he knew how to make a few powerful seals, he was nowhere near as good as those from the Uzumaki clan were and still are, but he made do with what he did know. He walked over to the boat's edge and saw the film crew finishing up their preparations for the morning shoot. Naruto smiled because these people were dedicated to their work despite the fact that they were in danger of being attacked by enemy shinobi. Naruto took out his cane and started walking down the icy shore to his destination. He walked around twirling it and whistled a tune. It took him about 10 minutes to get to his destination, and as he did so, he noticed the small boat that had been tailing them for the past few days. Naruto kicked his foot through the snow until he came across a rock. He picked it up and tossed it in his hands a few times before tossing it towards the ship's only window. "And there goes our deposit," a voice from behind Naruto said. When he turned around, he saw two figures standing behind a tree. One of them was a tall man with a fair complexion. He had onyx eyes with long, pronounced tear troughs beneath them. He wore his jet black hair back in a low ponytail, and his face was framed by center-parted bangs that reached his chin. To symbolize his broken ties with the village, he wore the standard Akatsuki cloak, which was black with red clouds, and a slashed Konoha forehead protector. His ponytail was obscured by the cloak's high collar. The second man was a tall, muscular shinobi who towered over the first. He had the appearance of a shark, complete with pale, green skin. He had small, round, white eyes, 3 sets of curved facial markings beneath his eyes, shoulder gills, and sharp triangular teeth. Just out of personal curiosity, Naruto said as he rested his cane on his shoulder, noting that he didn't sense any murderous intent from them, which was why he was curious as to why they were following him and his group. He was certain they weren't here for the princess, which only added to his confusion. "How much did you pay for the boat rental?" "Too much," the shark-like man grumbled as he recalled the negotiations, "since I'm fairly certain we were duped by that man." "Yeah," Naruto agreed, "and that's why I don't rent things. I buy so I don't get taken advantage of and can use the item as much as I want." "We're getting off track, Kisame," the dark-haired man said. "And you are?" Naruto inquired, his brow furrowed. "My name is Itachi Uchiha," the newly christened shinobi explained. "The infamous Uchiha of Konoha, who murdered his entire clan except for his brother." "The same," Itachi said with a quick nod. "So what brings the infamous Itachi all the way out here to freeze in the snow?" asked Naruto, who was still perplexed as to what the hell was going on but couldn't figure it out. "Do you require any medical treatment? Because if that's the case, we can talk about price. But be aware that all prices are fixed and non-negotiable." "That is not why we are here," Itachi said, raising a hand to halt the conversation. "We are here on orders from our leader to recruit you into our organization." "Which is it?" asked Naruto, still in the dark about it. "The Akatsuki." "Ah," Naruto said, having heard about them while traveling. He recognized them as mercenaries because they were S-ranked shinobi who worked for the highest bidder. "I see. Will you accept our invitation?" Itachi asked monotonously. "No," Naruto said simply, shaking his head. "Do you have any specific reasons why you don't want to join us?" "Because I do not need to conceal myself like those in your organization." "Because you're all S-ranked missing nin and I'm just a well-known surgeon," Naruto stated simply. "I have no need to hide because I answer to no one and have no price on my head. Plus, by remaining independent, I keep all of the money I earn for myself rather than having to share it with the group." "Alright, you little shit," Kisame said as he sharpened his blade in preparation for a fight. To be honest, he was hoping for one because the adrenaline would warm up his body after the cold had played havoc with his blood. "Let me explain in a way you'll understand. Either you work for us or your career as a doctor ends here and now." "So you've resorted to threatening me now," Naruto said, his face sinister. Itachi became uneasy when he saw this, but Kisame only felt his adrenaline increase. "In so many ways, that is a bad idea. Do you really believe you can take on 2S-ranked shinobi by yourself?" Itachi asked emotionlessly as he activated his Sharingan. He had been warned not to underestimate Naruto because so many others had done so and paid the price with their lives. "What is it with you clan people," Naruto gritted his teeth, "that you think you're so much better than those who aren't? I don't think that way." "Don't lie to me," Naruto said angrily, "because I despise liars. You remind me so much of your pitiful little brother." "Don't you dare insult my family," Itachi snarled. "Wow. Coming from the man who slaughtered them all. Enough babbling. Kisame, I'll leave him up to you." "It's about damn time," Kisame said, swinging his sword at Naruto with enough force to blow the snow away from the area. Naruto easily avoided the blow and attempted to bind Kisame with his wires, but they were greatly weakened in such cold weather as he was experiencing right now. Furthermore, Kisami's toughened skin made it nearly impossible to use his wires effectively. As a result, he had to rely on other abilities he possessed. Kisame summoned multiple sharks to attack Naruto, but his wires were effective enough to stop them in midair. But it wasn't until then that Naruto realized this was a distraction, and Kisame had done it to swing at his neck. Naruto didn't flinch as the blade made contact, but he did smile as Kisami's smirk vanished when he realized the blade wasn't cutting as it should. "What the hell is this?" Kisame demanded angrily. Naruto grinned as he removed one of his gloves. Kisame watched in disbelief as Naruto's hand changed to a black-grayish color and he used it to grab a hold of Samahata, grabbing it so tightly that it would not budge no matter how hard Kisame pulled. "This is known as the Steel Release," Naruto said with a sinister chuckle, "and it is one of 5 abilities that I have within me." Naruto then slammed his fist into Kisami's face, blasting him backwards quite a bit. As he was blasted backwards, Kisame let go of his blade, which Naruto saved for later. He wasn't sure what he'd do with it in the end, but that was something to think about later. But when he saw Kisame get up from the ground, he took one step forward to attack Naruto again, but he never took another because his body blew up, leaving only his legs in bloody snow. This was Naruto's explosion release, and he could use it to make people explode by punching them, but he had to have more chakra than the person or object he hit. But few knew that Kisame had weak chakra and relied too heavily on his blade's ability to drain others' chakra to power himself up. This was apparently a side effect of using Samahata for an extended period of time. For years after acquiring the ability to use blood as a weapon via blood transfusion, he continued to research the means to transfer others as well. It took a long time to perfect the means, with more failures than he was willing to admit, but he was able to do so without any negative consequences. He did this because he had a life goal that he couldn't complete as he was before, and he needed the power to finish it. The problem was finding those with bloodlines he could experiment on, and he found the ideal subjects in the deceased bodies of several shinobi from around the world. 4 extinct bloodlines now flowed through his body, as if reborn through him, and he would use them to achieve his main goal in life. "Do you still think I have no chance?" laughed Naruto as he noticed Itachi begin to walk away a little. "Just because you killed Kisame doesn't mean you can defeat me," Itachi said as he performed the appropriate hand signals and blew a massive wave of flames at him. Naruto simply used his cane to twirl the wind around him, extinguishing the flames before they got too close. He then clicked his fingers, setting up one of his rooms before Itachi's eyes were in his hand with a quick sleight of hand. Itachi was understandably disturbed by this turn of events because he was literally looking at himself with his own eyes and clumsily used his hands to see if this was an illusion. However, he felt the empty sockets where his eyes had been and began to shake in fear because this was not natural in any way. "You think you're going to win because you have these eyes," Naruto said as he took out a vial and placed them inside. "Well, that didn't work out for you, did it?" Naruto then smacked Itachi across the face with his cane as Itachi attempted to counter his strikes. But it was difficult for him because he was seeing everything through a distorted lens inside a vial. Sure, he had trained for a variety of scenarios, but this was one that had never been taught. But what were the chances of this exact situation occurring in the first place? Naruto continued slamming him around until Itachi coughed up blood, which Naruto then dipped his cane into. More of Itachi's flood was being sucked out of his body. Naruto formed a scythe blade out of the collected blood and kicked Itachi over onto his back. "And thus ends Itachi Uchiha's legacy," Naruto said as he slashed Itachi's left arm at the shoulder. The man screamed in agony because it hurt like hell. This was yet another situation for which he was unprepared, as one does not train to deal with severed appendages. My brother will avenge me, Itachi declared defiantly, and he will restore our clan to its former glory. Not when I'm done with him, Naruto said as he severed the other arm. What are you doing? To be honest, it is your fault that you attacked me when I refused to join your group. This is why I try to avoid fighting whenever possible, because I enjoy it when I do. I'm a doctor, so I know how to make someone suffer as much as possible before they die. But your brother is a completely different story. Please leave him alone. He has not harmed you. Wrong, yelled Naruto angrily as he slashed both of Itachi's legs with a single swipe. Itachi was only alive because Naruto's room ability was still active, as he would have passed out from the pain and bled to death if it hadn't been. Your brother made fun of me for not having a clan to call my own. He beat me bloody for even being near him because he claimed I was so beneath him. He mocked me even more when I lost everything I cared about in life, claiming that some low clan less nobody like me should take it as a sign and commit suicide. To make matters worse, he used his fucking eyes, which he had somehow unlocked, to try to manipulate me into killing myself with a shard of glass. You're lying. Sasuke would never do anything like that. You can stay in denial all you want, Naruto said as he stepped off Itachi's chest and picked up one of his amputated arms. This one bore a summoning symbol. But in the end, it doesn't matter to me. I will torture your brother and leave him a broken man. His death will not be brought about by my hand, but he will undoubtedly wish it had been, just like you. Naruto said that last bit before beginning to walk away from Itachi's body stump. Where are you going? Itachi asked as he wiggled his body around trying to do something, but he couldn't move very well with nothing but stumps where his arms and legs used to be. Throwing you to the wolves, as many have done to me, Naruto continued to walk. He took the arm and the Sharingan eyes and placed them in a scroll to be studied later. Itachi was helpless in this situation because no one knew he was there except Kisame and Naruto. But Naruto had vanished and Kisame had died, so he was screwed. To make matters worse, he heard growling from multiple sources around him, but since the room was no longer in effect, he couldn't see who or what was making the sounds. But he had no more questions after the wolves that had surrounded his body charged forward, tearing him apart and feasting on his flesh as he screamed in pain and horror. And yet, no one could hear him scream. At this moment. Dear Kami, Haku said, because that was all she could say after hearing how her boyfriend had completely decimated the two shinobi who had come for him. She had seen Naruto fight and kill people in various ways before, but this was a whole new level of gore she had no idea he was capable of. Most women would break up with such a man because he seemed insane, but Haku had been raised by Zabuza, who was nearly as bloodthirsty as Naruto when it came to killing, so it didn't bother her in the least. It made her smile even more because she knew those who tried to hurt her would feel his wrath, and that would not end well for them. I second that, Zabuza said as Naruto finished the story. I retract what I said about the bridge kid. Most of the time, you terrify me. Glad to see that I can make someone of your reputation scared, Naruto said, leaning forward on his cane despite the fact that he was still standing the entire time he told his story. So, what did you do with the Itachi parts you stole? She inquired of Haku, curious as to why he would do such a thing. Well, as you can see, I implanted the eyes into myself, but not directly. What exactly do you mean? I essentially liquefied them to their genetic base level and then injected my eyes to gain the ability to change my eyes back and forth as I wish because it makes it easier to use without the constant drain of chakra hindrance. I'm not like Kakashi of Konoha, who has a hidden one. Didn't that hurt? Zabuza asked, winced slightly after learning Naruto had injected something into his eye. The mental image alone was painful to contemplate. It would have if I hadn't experimented on myself a while back and tweaked my nerves so that I don't feel pain unless I want to, and boy, let me tell you, that was painful, Naruto chuckled. Stop, said Zabuza, who had had enough of hearing about such things. So, what do we do now? Well, Those scrolls one gave you make us all citizens of Spring Country, so let's go find a place to live. Plus, instead of having to go to the people, I can open a proper facility that people will come to, which is becoming a bit of a nuisance at times, and it would be nice to just relax in an office instead of walking into a town and waiting for someone to come out of the woodwork and request assistance. But what use do you have for a building when this operating room of yours is in another dimension entirely? Asked Zabuza because Naruto had told him that a while back, but while he was skeptical at first, Naruto proved him wrong by showing that the place had no exits other than the door he could conjure up that went to so many different places that he had been before, so he had no room for argument since he couldn't deny the facts that were in front of him. It's just appearances, Naruto said as he imagined a door leading them to a location near Spring Country's capital. However, how are we going to afford a house?
I don't have that kind of money lying around because most of my money was spent on staying hidden with Haku and the Demon Brothers.
I'll lend you the money to get your own place, but it'll be your responsibility to pay me back on time, or else I'll shove your head up your urethra this time. Try breathing through your piss hole. When Zabuza heard this, he lost all color in his face and simply nodded, indicating that he agreed to the terms without question. He silently cursed himself because he had repeatedly hoped for Haku to find a man strong enough to protect her because he did care about her, but this man far exceeded that bar and had broken it with his knee. But Haku was content, so he would keep his mouth shut. Now if he could just find a woman to settle down with, he thought as he walked through the door, followed by Haku and then Naruto as he closed it behind him. Country of Mist. A seductive redhead woman was poring over a map of the area, plotting her next battle. She sneezed for no apparent reason and wiped her nose, wondering where the hell that came from. Iwa. Onoki sat at his desk, sipping his tea and contemplating current events. He'd just received a scroll, which was sent every few months, to register those he was sending to the Chunin exams in another village. While this wasn't usually a problem for them because it happened 3 to 4 times a year, what worried him was the fact that this time it was Konoha who was hosting them. He hadn't forgotten that Root Shinobi had attempted to kill him and kidnap his granddaughter, most likely to use her to breed more shinobi and kunoichi for her bloodline. What made matters worse was that his granddaughter was taking the Chunin exams alongside her team. Even though she was with a squad, Onoki was concerned for her safety because they would be in enemy territory, where many things could go wrong and he would be powerless to intervene. Kuretsuchi had been looking forward to this for a long time and had worked hard to prepare for it, so he was hesitant to tell her she wasn't going for her own safety. If only she could rely on someone far more powerful to protect her. He smiled to himself at that moment, mentally slapping himself for not thinking of this sooner. He knew just the person who could assist him. Naruto, or the Surgeon of Death as he was known throughout the land. The boy was extremely powerful from what he could see, which wasn't much, but from what he could see alone, he demonstrated that he had potential and skills that far exceeded any genin around. The boy was ideal because he was not registered to any shinobi village and was not a ranked shinobi, allowing him to easily pose as one if necessary. Plus, he was certain Kuretsuchi would welcome the opportunity to spend time with her savior if possible. She had changed the day Naruto had saved her because she had increased her training exponentially so that she would not be put in a situation like that one again because it was very unlikely that Naruto would save her again like he had if it did. Despite the fact that she worked hard every day to become stronger, she would always blush or giggle whenever Naruto himself came to the village for supplies or to help heal those who paid him. Onoki noticed the obvious signs of a crush and decided that this would be an excellent opportunity for them to get to know each other. Who knows, maybe they'll get along well enough and marry so the boy can join their village properly. Having someone of his caliber among their ranks would greatly enhance their reputation, but this was all wishful thinking. So, with a smirk on his face, he wrote the same thing on several scrolls and summoned his best hunter Nin. He gave each of them a scroll and instructed them to find Naruto and deliver the message he had written. Konoha a month later. Minato sat alone at his desk, deep in thought about the news that had just been delivered to him. He was relieved to see that his daughter and her team had returned safely from their mission, but he was irritated that things had not gone as planned. Because of Jiraiya's spy network, he knew the mission was far more dangerous than the client had mentioned, so he sent his daughter and her team, who were some of the most powerful genin he had at the time. The plan was for them to help the people of Wave, and then they would be so grateful for the help that they would agree to Minato's terms for a trading contract in honor of the help from their hero, which he had hoped would be Naruto. But that was not how things played out at all, because a third party had swooped in and ended the life of the tyrannical businessman Gato rather than any of the Konoha shinobi. In gratitude, they even named the bridge after him. Sure, Squad 7 was ambushed near the beginning of the mission, but they handled the Demon Brothers quite well, as well as the first fight they had with Zabuza before being tricked by a masked Kunoichi and his paralyzed body was taken to recover elsewhere. But, just as victory seemed to be on the verge the second time they fought, with Zabuza about to be killed by Kakashi and the Kunoichi he had with him restrained and nearly ready for transport back to the village to breed more of her bloodline, everything went to hell in a hurry. And hearing the name of the person who messed with his plans enraged him even more. Naruto. Minato recognized the boy as soon as he heard his name, but he kept his emotions in check so as not to reveal anything. That boy had been a nuisance since his birth, as his mother Mocha had repeatedly requested his assistance to help them survive, but he had refused. He had impregnated the woman in order to obtain money from her wealthy family, not to spend his own money on a child he couldn't care less about because he was useless. He even signed the paperwork to keep the boy out of the academy because he believed the boy had no potential and was planning on having Danzo kidnap him to turn him into a root shinobi so that the boy would simply vanish and his failed attempt at easy money would be forever erased from the public eye. But that never happened because the boy simply vanished from the village on his own accord, and Minato couldn't be happier because now his wife Kushina would never come across him, and if the gods truly blessed him, he would simply die on his own. But his perceptions of the boy had shifted dramatically. What Kakashi and his team had told him was very upsetting. Not only was the boy not dead, as he had hoped, but he had revealed their relationship to Naruto, which luckily for him he dismissed as someone lying to get into her head as a form of distraction, and she believed him. He would have simply sent Root Shinobi to eliminate him in secret, but the boy's bloodline was unlike anything he or anyone else had ever seen. He'd spent countless hours researching all known bloodlines, and while there were many, none of them involved using blood as a weapon, as Naruto had done on the bridge. He looked into the boy's family because, despite being an unwanted bastard child, he still had their genetics and they couldn't change that, and found nothing of the sort. So, how did he come to wield such power? Orochimaru's attempts at transferring bloodlines came to mind, but that would only work if he had a sample to transfer, and since this one was brand new, there were no samples to take and experiment with. Naruto, on the other hand, was the infamous surgeon of death who roamed the elemental countries and healed people. He was well liked everywhere, and the fact that he had no bounty on his head meant that Minato couldn't just kill him would be a waste of a rare bloodline. What he needed to do was find a way to entice the boy to come here, where he would have an advantage, and capture him. Once captured, it would be relatively simple for a Yamanaka to persuade him that Konoha was once again his home. But now he had to figure out how he was going to do that. Spring Valley. Naruto and his friends had had a fairly hectic 2 weeks. The three of them looked for separate places to live, with Naruto and Haku settling on a small one-story house and Zabuza moving into his own apartment. Naruto had spent the rest of his money, except for his materials funding, which he kept separate at all times so that he did not spend it by accident, to buy furniture for not only both locations, but also a small office building he rented so that he could officially have a place of business. He hung the sign and installed a bell atop the door to alert him to any visitors. If he wasn't there or couldn't get to the person in need, he kept appointment cards in a container that was stuck to the window outside and could be dropped into the mail slot so he could enter them into his log. He changed the 1-week calendar he had visible since he posted it on the window every Sunday, as well as a sign warning people that his hours were subject to change. In the week and a half since he opened the door to his new office, he has seen a slew of clients with a variety of issues, all of which he has successfully resolved. He realized he needed a secretary at this point, and he found a young orphan girl named Yuna who was looking for work to help her family survive. He showed her how to do it, which was fairly simple, and he even renovated the back area, which had been empty until now, into a live-in space with a mini fridge, a cot, and a hot plate with some dishes to use. Yuna was happy, which made Naruto happy because he liked to help. Today, however, was different. Naruto had awoken from his slumber, unwrapped Haku's arm from around him because she was a bit clingy when they slept in the same bed, and gone through his usual morning routine to present himself to the world. He smiled as he took one last look at Haku, who was still sleeping, because she looked as peaceful as she did sexy in her underwear. One might think that these two have been screwing non-stop, but to be honest, they were both still virgins because they weren't quite ready to take that leap yet. They would be in time, but not yet. And it appeared that Haku was more prepared than she was letting on, as she became increasingly clingy as the days passed, and Naruto was constantly having to untangle himself from her. But today, when he went to his office, he discovered a scroll, or several scrolls, with the seal of Iwa's cage on them all in his mailbox outside the door. So he brought them inside to read. He was curious about what the old man had sent because this was an official scroll and not a personal message like he usually received from people. He just hoped it wasn't another attempt to persuade him to join the village, because he had told multiple people that he wanted to be free to roam and help those in need. Because the request was unusual, what he read made him raise an eyebrow. He wanted Naruto to take the place of one of Kuretsuchi's genin in order to protect her from those in Konoha who would use the event to capture her for her bloodline. Naruto read the other scrolls as well and noticed that they all said the same thing, so he assumed Onoki had sent the same message with multiple messengers in an attempt to find him faster. That was understandable given that he was usually on the move, making it difficult to track him down. Naruto deliberated for a while before making a decision. He had always intended to return to the village at least once in his life to visit his mother's grave after leaving without saying goodbye. And now he had a legitimate reason to return, so he would take it. Naruto activated the summoning seal on the back of his hand, summoning a crow to land on his desk. Naruto had summoned a crow with the seal that had been on Itachi's arm a week before and signed the contract with them. While they were initially enraged that their previous summoner had been killed because they were attracted to someone with a dark aura of pain and hatred, they soon realized that Naruto's aura of such things far exceeded Itachi's, so they were delighted to name Naruto their new summoner. Naruto wrote his response to Onoki's request, but only if he could bring Haku along with him because she wanted to test herself in the exams as well. She had told him a while ago that she was essentially born a missing nin because she was hated in Mist for her bloodline and thus was never able to become a ranked nin or show others what she was capable of. So why not kill two birds with one stone? He can do the job, Haku gets what he wants, and he can visit his mother's grave while in the village. With that, Naruto opened his logbook and looked up who he was assisting today. Naruto sat in his office, updating his logbook while smiling to himself. He had just returned from making a house call to a young boy no older than 5 years old who had traveled for several days by himself to find him. His mother had become ill, and the doctor they had couldn't figure out what was wrong with her. He had done his best, but it wasn't enough, and he had told the boy that she would most likely die. And, as one would expect from a young child hearing such tragic news, the boy sobbed over the fact that he would lose his only parent, as his father had died in a mine collapse a year before. One of the other patients in the clinic had casually mentioned Naruto as the world's miracle worker and how he could easily heal her if he was here to do so. When the boy heard what the man had to say, he ran out the door and into town in search of Naruto. But, even though his hometown was not far from the spring capital, he was young and had a terrible sense of direction, so it took longer than it should. The boy had finally received proper directions from an elderly man who was also on his way to meet Naruto for medical assistance, and he had made it to his intended destination with the man's assistance. Naruto first assisted an elderly man who was suffering from back pain that was easily treated. Once the man was well and gone, he inquired of the boy as to what he required. The boy explained that his mother was ill, and the doctor couldn't figure out why, so he couldn't cure her. The kid opened his bag and dumped out a few shining blue rocks as payment because he thought they were valuable and he had nothing else to offer. Naruto grabbed one and quickly conjured up a lead container to put it in. He asked the kid where he got the rocks, and the boy explained that they were mined in the tunnels where his father used to work. Naruto explained to the young boy that the rocks were glowing due to radioactivity, and that they were most likely the cause of his mother's illness. The shinobi world was unaware of such things, and to be honest, Naruto was relieved because if they found a way to weaponize it, as people had done long ago according to Faust, the world would literally be set on fire because they would be used to obliterate one village or another. He noticed the boy was perplexed by that word, so he explained that the rocks were poisonous in the sense that being near them made you sick in a way that doctors couldn't heal. He had seen the boy's worried expression, but had calmed him down by telling him that he had the means to heal her, and had gone to get what he needed to heal her. Once all of the necessities were gathered, he piggybacked the boy back to his house because he was faster and had a better sense of direction. When he arrived, he told the boy to stay out of the house, regardless of what he heard. The youngster had nodded in agreement. Before he could operate on her in his operating room, Naruto had to decontaminate her of the radiation. He injected her with the serum to start the process after warning her that it would be excruciatingly painful. She began to scream in pain as the medicine entered her body, as if she were bathed in liquid magma. Her screams echoed throughout the town, prompting many people to rush to her aid, but the boy was there to prevent them from entering on Naruto's orders. The medicine effectively forced the radiation that had seeped deep into her body to the surface. Naruto was able to simply drain it from them. He took her into the operating room once she was fully decontaminated and was able to remove and replace the damaged tissue on the organs within her. She was healthy and ready to go in no time, as if she had never been sick in the first place. He gave her 2 weeks of medicine after she was healed to help her recover from any residual effects. She was grateful for his assistance, but she was concerned because she didn't have any money to pay for his services. Naruto was infamous for making his patients pay in either cash or their lives, and she sadly did not have the cash. Naruto simply smirked at her and assured her that he would not charge her for this. She asked why, and he simply stated that he had lost his mother when he was 5 years old, leaving him alone in the world. He didn't want the boy to suffer the same fate, so he healed her, but he warned her that he had a reputation to uphold, so she should tell people she paid him or else he would return. As he walked away, he assured the boy that his mother would be fine, but before he did so, he requested the rest of the shiny rocks so that no one else was harmed. It took some time, but the boy eventually handed over all of the rocks and thanked him for assisting his mother. Naruto took the rocks and ground them into a fine powder with his powers. He had been working on a poison for an opponent he would face in the future for quite some time. And, contrary to popular belief, he did not create it for Minato, but rather for another opponent entirely. He was missing the final piece, and the radioactive stones were just what he needed to complete his lethal concoction. Now that it was finished, he placed it in a special syringe and placed it in a special container, which he then placed in the freezer to preserve it. He'd returned home after finishing his little side project, and as a result, events had caught up to the present. Naruto had been patiently awaiting the Tsuchikage's response, and he had not been disappointed in his long wait since the note arrived. Onoki had agreed to his terms and asked that he come to Iwa as soon as possible so that they could discuss the plans for the upcoming Chunin exam, which they would be assisting with. Naruto smiled as he told Yuna to keep an eye on the place and notify everyone that he would be gone for a while. He then took out a small stack of bills so she could buy what she needed while he was gone. Then he went home and told Haku that they were going to Iwa, and as he said that, he conjured up his operating room door as usual, and they walked through it. They lingered in the operating room for a few minutes, which was unnecessary given that he could summon another door in 15 seconds. Haku simply took advantage of the opportunity to kiss him passionately while they were alone, but they eventually came to a halt and stepped through the door that opened not far from Iwa. The guards on duty at the front gate saw the door appear and smiled because they knew who had caused it to appear in the first place. Naruto and Onoki had a standing agreement that he would never use the door to infiltrate the village and that he could enter the village whenever he wanted as long as he used the front door. And Naruto had done so even though he had no reason to sneak into the village in the first place. He was not a spy for anyone because he was a neutral party in world politics, working as a doctor rather than a shinobi in any village. He only came to the villages to heal people who couldn't come to him and to buy medicinal ingredients. Naruto walked towards the guards, twirling his cane in his hand, and handed one of them the scroll given to him before continuing on his way to the cage's office. As he walked towards his destination, he waved to those who passed by. A few people approached him for medical assistance, which he agreed to provide but at a cost. But he and Haku eventually arrived at their destination, where they saw Onoki smoking on a pipe. Naruto had prescribed him some medicinal herbs to be smoked in order to calm and relax the person who smoked them. This allowed him to relax his body and clear his mind, allowing him to think clearly and not stress himself out, potentially causing another back injury. "Hello, Gramps," Naruto said as he entered the room. He used his wires to pull out 2 chairs, which he and Haku sat in. "Hello Naruto," Onoki said, tapping the ashes of his pipe into a small tray he was using to collect them. He was far too calm to respond to Naruto's remark about Gramps. Naruto respected him enough to follow his rules in the village, and that was enough for him. There was also the fact that the herbs he smoked made it nearly impossible for him to feel angry for a while after he smoked them. "So, we're here as requested," Naruto said with a smile. He had admired Onoki since the first time he met him because he was willing to put himself in danger to protect his family. He had already lost his children, so he decided to raise their daughter as best he could so she could grow strong and defeat anyone who came after her in the future. "So, where is our squad mate, at the moment?" "Ah," Onoki smirked, "she should be here soon. One of my men told her to come here not long ago." Kuretsuchi walked into the room, fully dressed in genin shinobi gear and carrying a pack full of essentials for the trip to Konoha. "I'm here and ready to go," said Kuretsuchi, who was overjoyed to be traveling with her crush and had made plans to make a move on him during the trip. If everything went according to plan, she would get him as a boyfriend and nothing would stop her. "Has Akatsuchi packed yet? I don't see him here packed and ready to go." "Well, about that." Onoki began with a nervous chuckle. He'd never gotten around to telling her that Naruto was in a relationship, so her plans to entice him into one for herself were out of the question.
He will not accompany you to your Chunin exams.
"So, who is our third member?" Kuretsuchi inquired, raising an eyebrow. She was already aware that Naruto would be replacing their third member, which didn't bother her too much, but learning that the second one would also be replaced surprised her. "Hello there," Haku said as she stood up and turned to face her before politely bowing. "My name is Haku Momochi." "Nice to meet you, Haku," Kuretsuchi said as she bowed as well. While she appeared to be pleased on the outside, she was furious on the inside. The plan was to seduce Naruto on the way to Konoha, which would have been simple because the third person was supposed to be a male but was now not. For all she knew, this pretty little bitch was trying to get her man, and she would be damned if she let this pretty little bitch get what was rightfully hers. Haku saw the rage in her eyes and made an educated guess as to why they had that in the first place. She was well aware that Kuretsuchi was madly in love with her boyfriend and was most likely planning to seduce him on this trip. When Haku saw this, she could only smirk because Naruto was already her boyfriend and this bitch could handle it. "Now that you ladies have gotten acquainted," Naruto said, clapping his hands together and rising from his seat, "I am going to spend the day healing people while I am in town. Shouldn't we be heading out towards Konoha?" Kuretsuchi wondered. She was unaware of his ability to conjure doors that allowed her to travel quickly throughout the elemental countries. People knew he had this ability because he didn't hide it from them. He simply did not tell everyone he met, and the only people who knew he could were his patients. "We need to leave tonight if we want to make it in time." "Not really," Naruto replied, "because I can get us there in about 15 minutes. "How?" Kuretsuchi asked, surprised, because she had only ever known one person who could do something like that, and Naruto was not Minato Namikaze, so he could not teleport as far as she knew. I have my ways, Naruto shrugged, and Gramps knows how I can, so it's a little surprising that you don't know about it, but you'll just have to wait until tomorrow for that. So, Gramps, is the usual room available? I've notified the hotel ahead of time so they know you're coming, Onoki said with a smile. Every time Naruto visited Iwa, he stayed in the same room so that everyone knew where to find him. It wasn't their best room, but Naruto wasn't into that sort of thing. He had grown up poor, so the room he could reserve was adequate for him. Despite the fact that there was only one bed, Naruto was used to sleeping with Haku, so it was no problem. Good, Naruto said with a silly grin. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some money to make and people to help while I'm here, so let's meet at the front gate at 9 a.m. so we can eat breakfast before we head out towards Konoha, he said as he walked out of the room. Haku followed suit because she planned to do some shopping while she was here because she had never been to one of the major villages before and thought she would take advantage of the opportunity while she was here. Kuretsuchi groaned to herself as they both left, because she had gotten up early to pack her belongings, only to find out they weren't leaving until tomorrow, giving her more time than she expected. But her groans quickly turned to growls as she twitched at the thought of another woman attempting to take what she considered hers. She looked at her grandfather with rage in her eyes because he hadn't told her about the women when the Chunin exam plans came up and she was going to be quite vocal about it. A few hours later, Naruto had followed through on his promise to visit and heal those in need of medical attention. Fortunately for him, no one required major surgery. They simply wanted his assistance because he could heal things that took months to heal in hours. So, once everyone who needed help had been healed and the money owed had been paid, Naruto went to the room that the hotel had reserved for him. It was there that he was given a sight he would never forget. Haku had been waiting for him in sexy lingerie. She apparently got tired of him not responding to her subtle advances and decided to be blunt about it and take what she wanted from him. Plus, she'd seen another woman want her boyfriend for herself and knew she needed to stake her claim, so to speak. So, as soon as Naruto entered the room, she locked her lips onto his. She had literally ripped his clothes off his body to get to the part she was lusting after, and when she saw it with her own eyes, she was astounded by what she saw. His dick was fairly large and thick as hell, and the sight of it made her even wetter than she was from fingering herself while waiting for him to return to the room for the night. It was difficult to believe someone his size existed, but the man was a miracle worker, so he most likely enhanced himself using his abilities as well as his medical expertise, and honestly, she didn't care because the end results were very satisfying to her. Naruto had to admit to himself over time that he was pretty clueless about women. Sure, he fell in love with Haku, but his mind was usually preoccupied with things like different ways to heal people, rare medicinal herbs and where to get them as well as how to use them, and a small part of his mind was consumed in rage against the very people who had ruined his childhood and taken away his happiness in his youth. This didn't leave him with much time to think about such things as the pleasures of the flesh, but that was all he could think about right now as Haku slowly, yet sensually, stripped off what little she had on before lying on the bed and beckoned him towards her with a single finger. While this was going on, Kuretsuchi sneaked into the hotel past the night shift crew, which was simple given the small number of them. She had come this night to make a move on Naruto so that the bitch he had come with would back off of her man once she laid claim to him with her body. Sure, she would have preferred to take this relationship slowly, with dates and getting to know the man before fucking his brains out, but the variable that was this strange woman forced her hand, and she had to act now or never. She blushed to herself as she considered what she was about to do, and a small amount of fluid began to leak from her precious spot in anticipation. She'd bought some skimpy underwear for the occasion, barely covering anything, and she knew Naruto would be hers with one look at her fabulous body. When she finally got to his room, she took out a lockpick and began to pick the lock on the door because it was late at night and she wasn't supposed to be there at this time. She was just relieved that the woman who had come with him was in another room and that she had been in this room while Naruto was here because he had treated her here for a few cuts and bruises. But as she finally managed to pick the lock and open the door slowly and quietly, she heard what sounded like a thud against the wall. Kuretsuchi entered quietly and closed the door behind her as she passed the sitting room. Turning around, I noticed light shining through the crack around Jake's bedroom door. She crept across the room as quietly as she could and stood silently outside the bedroom door. Turning her head, she placed her left ear near the door and listened to what was going on behind it. She didn't hear anything at first, but then she heard an unmistakable groan. Kuretsuchi was all too familiar with that sound. She'd been making plenty of them herself over the last few days as she fantasized about Naruto becoming hers. A few seconds later, she heard another groan from Naruto's room. She listened more intently now, hoping that she was just hearing things and that everything was not as it appeared. She could hear heavy breathing and a gentle tapping on the room's wall. After a few quiet moments, she heard Haku, whose voice she recognized, say, "Oh fuck. Eat me." Kuretsuchi took a step back from the door as she heard that, her heart racing. They were fucking. She had arrived too late. Kuretsuchi crept back against the door, careful not to press against it and alert them to her presence, and continued to listen to them. Haku kept breathing so loudly that Kuretsuchi could hear every inhalation and exhalation. Her groans of delight became louder and more frequent with each passing second. "Naruto, eat me." She imagined what was happening behind this door. Naruto's face was buried between that young girl's legs, his mouth and tongue lapping at her young cunt, probing deep inside it. Haku lay with her legs open, staring down at Naruto as he sucked and licked her. That bitch in the room should be doing those things to her, not him. "Oh Naruto. So that's good," she exclaimed with delight. This went on for several minutes, making Kuretsuchi blush as she stood there and listened for reasons she didn't fully comprehend. The moans became louder and the sounds of breathing became deeper as she stood there, her body becoming hotter as she continued to listen. "Put your fingers into me, Naruto."
Kuretsuchi felt a rush of excitement rush through her entire body as she listened to Haku tell Naruto what she wanted. Then,
Standing there, she let her hands wander under her shirt, then over her breasts, and began to pinch on her nipples, feeling too hot and bothered by what she was hearing. Her pussy was getting wet, and she was definitely getting turned on while listening to this. Kuretsuchi heard her voice again, breathless and low, but clear and unmistakable, after several moments of listening to Haku being delighted by Naruto's clearly talented fingers and tongue.
Naruto.
"I want your big cock." Kuretsuchi's eyes widened, and she cupped both her hands around her breasts and squashed them together without thinking. The creaking of the bed and the noise of them moving around wafted from the room even through the closed door. She listened intently. "You want it hard, baby?" Naruto asked. "Fuck my little pussy hard, Naruto, and show me how much of a man you really are." "Oh yeah. I'll do it, babe. Of course, fill me up with your big cock. Oh, I love it when you say things like that." As Haku took Naruto inside her, Kuretsuchi just stood there listening to them. Her groans had turned into muffled screams in a matter of seconds. Clearly, Haku or Naruto had their hands over her mouth, muffled the squeals of delight that threatened to escape. "Muffffffffhhhhhhh. Oh yeah baby. Take my cock," moaned Naruto. Kuretsuchi's mind raced as he listened to the sounds coming from behind that door. Naruto was right there between her legs, pushing that huge cock, which she could only imagine how gif it was in her mind, inside her, filling her young pussy with his enormous fucker. Her pussy was on fire, so she reached under her clothes and began playing with her wet cunt. The sounds from within the room became louder and more intense by the second. She could hear their bodies slapping against each other and the rhythmic knocking of the bed against the wall. Even though Haku's mouth was clearly covered, her screams of pleasure became more intense. The loud slapping noises just grew louder, and the pace of their fucking was clearly intense by this point. As Naruto fucked Haku harder, the bed hit the wall faster and faster. If she could hear this clearly from the door at the opposite end of the bedroom, she could only wonder what someone in the next hotel room over was hearing and hope that no one was complaining about it at the time. Kuretsuchi was a wreck outside the closed door. She was half bent over, her hand probing deep up her now soaked pussy. She had to cover her mouth with her other hand to keep any noises from escaping. Her heart was racing and her breathing was becoming increasingly irregular. She felt lightheaded, as if she were floating on a cloud. She was imagining what was going on in that room in her head. Naruto banging his entire cock inside that girl's pussy, giving her the damn good fucking that Kuretsuchi was now desperately seeking. "I'm going to cum, baby. Where do you want it? Fill me up with cum so I can feel you inside me all night." Kuretsuchi heard Naruto groan, along with the sounds of furious slapping of bodies as his thrust became faster as he neared the end. And just as quickly as the rapid thrusts began, they abruptly ceased as she heard Haku moan as her pussy was filled as she desired. Oh fuck c c c k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k k. As she listened to Naruto moan in ecstasy, shooting his load from his balls into the bitch who stole her man, she pounded her fingers up her pussy, hard and fast. She couldn't tell if he'd just fired his spunk over Haku or if he'd blown his entire load inside her. Her legs became very weak, and she could feel her pussy contracting around her fingers. Her insides became overflowing with her juices, and she practically gushed a puddle onto the floor. The sounds of heavy breathing continued inside the room, and she could still hear Haku's muffled groans as Naruto continued to pound into her. At this point, Kuretsuchi couldn't take it any longer and quietly exited the hotel room, knowing that if she stayed any longer, she'd break the door down and essentially have her way with Naruto regardless of what that jerk Haku said or did. Even though Haku had gotten Naruto to sleep with her first, she would eventually win his heart because she had a few tricks up her sleeve. The following morning, when Onoki and his granddaughter arrived, Naruto and Haku were already at the front gate of Iwa. Kuretsuchi's eye twitched as she noticed Haku practically glowing as she stood there smiling because she was in a good mood today. "So, where is the person who will play our Jonin instructor?" Naruto said, air quoting that last bit. "Well, my initial thought was to have Han or Roshi do it," Onoki sighed, "but I don't trust those in Konoha not already knowing of their status as Jinchuriki and trying to capture them while there. I am not going to just hand over what villages kill people for so easily." While the rest of the world assumed that Iwa was a village that despised their Jinchuriki, this was far from the case. Their alleged hatred for both Han and Roshi was a complex cover story, the likes of which had duped the rest of the villages. They made it appear this way so that those who tried to offer them a better life would be duped and captured, allowing them to learn who sent them in the first place and thus eliminate the threat at its source. And so far, this tactic had worked because the two of them had stayed together and grown strong as they trained in isolation to sell the lie of hatred to others. "So, who is our chaperone?" Naruto inquired, raising an eyebrow. "That would be Eagle here," Onoki said as a masked Anbu approached them and politely bowed. "Hey Brian," Naruto said casually, which surprised Onoki because an ANBU's identity was kept hidden from everyone except their commander and the cage of their respective village. It was unsettling to hear someone who didn't even live in the village know one of their identities. "How do you know who this man is?" Onoki inquired solemnly, hoping that this would not become a major issue in the future. Simple, Naruto shrugged, he was one of my patients here in the past. I have an eidetic memory when it comes to all my patients. I can't afford to forget a face in my line of business because the medicine I prescribe to so many people is something that I alone know how to make. I plan to teach others such things in the future, but that's another story. How many of my Anbu members' identities do you know? Honestly, Naruto admitted after some thought, I have no idea. It's not like they tell me that they are one, I just recognize the body type, hair, and skin color to identify them. You don't have to worry about me divulging such things because I am no shinobi, I'm just a doctor, and I take confidentiality very seriously because I have a reputation to uphold. I respect the rules of the places I go, but I personally don't care for politics and... Well, as long as that remains true, I have no problem. Onoki exhaled a sigh of relief. Please keep my granddaughter safe from those who will almost certainly try to kidnap her. It shouldn't be a problem, Naruto said with a chuckle, because when those who would even attempt such a thing hear that the infamous Surgeon of Death is in the village, well, their eyes will all be on me, and I expect no less than 3 attempts to either convince me to join their village or just straight up kidnap Kuretsuchi. Kuretsuchi will be safe as long as I am around. Do you give your word on that? Smirked Onoki. You have my word on it, Gramps, Naruto said with a smirk on his face, you know me far too well to doubt me. That I do, Onoki confirmed, so you should be on your way. You still haven't explained how we're going to get to Konoha so quickly, Kuretsuchi said, still perplexed as to how they'd get there. It takes at least 3 days of running to get to the village, and we're running a day late. Well, we'll just walk through this door, Naruto said as a door appeared out of thin air in front of them. Only Kuretsuchi was surprised by this because she had never seen this ability before. After that, we only have to wait about 15 minutes before I can summon another one near Konoha because I've been there before. Do you mean to tell me you have the ability to teleport long distances like Minato from Konoha? In a way, yes, Naruto said with a quick shrug of his shoulders because he had heard this before from a few other people who had seen him use this ability, but while he is able to teleport fast and kill people with his Hiroshin Jutsu, I am only able to transport people into my operating room and then to anywhere I have been before. Sure. I have the advantage of not needing seals of any kind like he does, but my ability. Oh, was all she could say because it made perfect sense to her once explained that way.
This ability is primarily used to transport injured patients to my personal operating room, so it's not surprising that there is a drawback to its use, but most operations take about 20 minutes anyway, so I don't see it as a problem of any kind. Okay, Kuretsuchi sighed, you made your point already, so there's no need to keep explaining it to me. Well then, Naruto said, pulling open the door and holding it open for them all to enter, shall we be on our way? The group entered the operating room through the doorway and then vanished from view, leaving Onoki standing there with a smile on his face because he knew his granddaughter was in good hands. Konoha, 1 hour later.
Minato sat in his office, having just finished speaking with the various shinobi who would be in charge of security during the Chunin exam. He had just finished all of the necessary paperwork and was about to leave to do some last-minute training with his daughter when one of his shinobi rushed into the room as he stood up to leave. I come bearing news, Lord Hokage, the man said as he kneeled in front of Minato. Speak, Minato said, genuinely interested in what the man had to say. The Surgeon of Death has arrived in town. Minato's eyes widened in surprise at this news. For quite some time, he had given his shinobi the order to either use brute force or persuade said surgeon to join their village. All of the other villages were doing the same thing, or were the last time he checked. So he didn't feel bad about commanding his shinobi to do such a thing. He had Danzo try to capture him using the root forces he had allowed the man to use in the shadows, but even they failed. Minato was unsure whether this was one of the main reasons Naruto never came to Konoha for business as he did the other villages. Now that the little brat was in his village, he would do everything he could to keep him because the ability to heal diseases deemed incurable, as well as a bloodline so rare that Naruto was the only one to have it, was not something he would let pass him by. And as he escorted the shinobi out of his room, he used his intercom to have his secretaries summon a specific shinobi for his plan. Outside, Naruto had separated himself from the other 3 members of his squad shortly after entering the village and was now walking down the street in search of a specific store he hoped was still open from his childhood, because if it wasn't, he'd have to find another to get what he needed. As Naruto walked calmly down the main street, memories of this place flooded his mind, the majority of which were negative. On the outside, he appeared to be having a good day as he twirled his cane, but on the inside, he was seething with rage. One day, soon, he would make those who ruined his childhood pay for their actions. But he eventually found the store he needed, which happened to be a florist. He went inside and had to hold back even more rage when he saw one of those on his never-ending shit list working behind the counter. Inoue. This scumbag had messed with him in his youth in such a way that he was affected until he was 9 years old. She used her family's signature jutsu to enter his mind and mess with it in ways he couldn't counter. Her mental attacks gave him horrifying nightmares of Ino's creation, but his mother had always been there to pull him out of the darkness of his own mind. There was no such help when she died, and Naruto struggled to keep his sanity until the day he left. It was thanks to Faust that medicine was created to help him clear his mind when he was 9, allowing him to finally get a good night's sleep without the usual nightmares that plagued him. He was finally able to fantasize about the good times he had with his mother, which motivated him to excel in his abilities. He was going to make Ino pay for her specific type of pain directed at him, and he had the perfect means to do so. So he walked up to the counter and ordered a dozen daisies right now. He paid for his order of flowers without hesitation because Ino was having a bad day because her plans to get Sasuke to notice her were not going as planned and now she had to mind the family store. Naruto took the flowers and started walking towards the cemetery with them. It may appear strange that the clan heirs did not recognize him from the past, but he had changed for the better. His hair had been long, unkempt, and ragged when he was a child. His clothes were nothing more than patched-together rags, and he didn't have a positive attitude because he was constantly mocked by other children his age. He was now the polar opposite of his former self, and he had a much better self-image of himself as a result of dressing better and taking better care of himself. Naruto smiled to himself as he approached his destination because he felt at peace. Over the years, he had a strong desire to return to this village to properly say his goodbyes to his mother, but he was afraid of what the village would do with him because he had such an infamous reputation that many villages tried to recruit him into their ranks. He knew very little about his mother personally because he had so little time with her, but her journal, which he kept to this day because it was the only thing he had of hers, told him a lot about her that he never got to ask her. Daisy was her favorite flower, which had irritated her family because they were the upper crust of Fire Country's higher-ups and only enjoyed the most expensive of things. So seeing one of their own like the inferior of the flowers irritated them. Their family was taught from a young age that if you didn't think like the rest of them, you were punished by the head of the household. Her own childhood had been difficult as well because she grew up in an abusive family, and they were planning to marry her off to a man twice her age so that she could at least be useful to them by bringing the families together. So Naruto understood why she ran away to the man who had saved her, since in her mind her savior was a better man than that. What made it worse was the act that the man was a well-known sexist man who had been married a few times before. Yet his wives had all mysteriously vanished before they could tell anyone about the horrors they had suffered at his hands. He knew this last part because the man was one of his patients, and Naruto tortured him in his operating room as he forced the man to admit to all of this while he was under the knife. That man never made it out of the table alive, and despite the fact that he was a doctor and they took a Hippocratic oath to do no harm, he was the surgeon of death and had not done so. He then destroyed the man's entire body, including his organs. While he would normally keep the organs for future transplants, he couldn't let even a single cell of that filth of a man live in any way. Naruto had finally arrived at his mother's grave, which had remained untouched all these years. All it had was her name and year of death, since no one really knew her enough to fill in the blanks. "Hello, Mother," said Naruto with a sad smile on his face as he set the daisies on the ground in front of her tombstone. It's good to see you again after so long. I know I didn't say goodbye when I left, and I apologize. Naruto sat in front of his mother's grave and began to converse with it. He talked about his adventures as well as his future plans. He was there for 3 hours, and they filled his heart with joy because he was finally getting the closure that his spirit so desperately needed. When he was finished, he said one last prayer to her before rising to his feet. I always remember the song you sang to me to calm me down when I had a nightmare, Naruto said, his eyes welling up with nostalgia, and it is only fair that I sing it to you while you sleep as you did for me. The memories of those nights came to the forefront of his mind as he stood there. His sleep was disrupted in his youth because Ino injected nightmares into his head, which he was forced to endure. His mother had been the one to help him relax when she sang the same song her uncle had sang to her when she was a child and had nightmares. According to him, it was a song he had heard from his father and others since before the shinobi in the land was in the warring era. Naruto then began to sing a song that his mother had told him was sung to her by an uncle who died when she was young. The vine's leaves, slowly falling, as fragile as tiny shells, drifting through the foam. Young soldier boy, come marching back home. Young soldier, you are brave. Comes marching in. He fell to his knees in sadness as he finished the song, unable to hold back the tears he had been holding back for years. They poured from his eyes, fell off his face, and landed on the ground. If only I could have saved you, Naruto muttered as his fists tightened and he clenched his teeth in rage. I swear to you, mother, I'll make them all pay for what they've done to us. He then rose to his feet and wiped his tears away. He smiled again as he removed his hat and placed it on his chest, bowing towards her grave before turning away and walking back towards the main part of town. He made his way to the hotel where he and the other two were staying, mentally preparing himself for the next few days.
The exams began in about 4 days, and he knew how quickly word spread in this village, so he was confident that people knew he was here and would flock to him to heal their various wounds and ailments.
Plus, he knew Minato knew he was here because when he and his squad signed in, one of the guards left as they began to walk away, implying that he was reporting to Minato. But, because he knew it was going to happen, he would deal with it when the time came. He just wanted to get back to his hotel room and rest up for tomorrow. He ran into someone he didn't expect as he walked to his hotel room. Uchiha, Sasuke. Hey, Sasuke growled, turning to yell at the jackass who had dared to bump into him, apologize. You have just rudely bumped into a Uchiha elite. Uchiha elite, huh? Chuckled Naruto, as hearing that was quite amusing to him. But let's be honest here, you only got that title through process of elimination, he said as he turned around to face Sasuke. Sasuke saw Naruto and recoiled in fear, remembering what happened the last time they unexpectedly met. His hands instinctively went to where his balls had been, and the memory of the pain inflicted on his person by the man before him caused him to sweat profusely. I'm surprised I ran into you of all people here, but you live in this village, so it's not too surprising when you think about it, and believe it or not, this presents a perfect opportunity for you. WH. What do you want from me? A nervous Sasuke asked. Many people, including his father, had told him for most of his life that he was elite. When Itachi killed his clan, he realized he wasn't as good as him and that he needed to train hard to bridge the gap if he ever wanted to avenge his clan in the future. But then he had to face Naruto, who easily beat him, maimed him by removing his balls, and shattered his dreams of avenging his clan by revealing evidence of Itachi's death. Sasuke was many things, the most prominent of which were arrogant and narcissistic, but suicidal was not one of them. He knew he had no chance against Naruto as he was, and he wasn't going to try. He'd already lost his literal balls, and he didn't want to lose any more. Just to return what I took, Naruto smirked as he whipped out a glass vial in his hand. It was clear, but it was filled with a clearish yellow liquid that contained 2 oval testicles floating in it. What? said Sasuke, surprised because he hadn't expected that response. As I previously stated, I want to return these to you. Oh, Sasuke said, admitting that he didn't know what to say in this situation. But wait a minute, Naruto said with a frown on his face, while I wish to give you this, these are not free in the least. What I hold in my hands is your literal future, because without these, you will be the last of the Uchiha to exist. What do you want? Sasuke growled. He wanted nothing more than to reclaim his balls by force, but he couldn't risk it with so much at stake. To give you the same chance I had to be great and known throughout the elemental countries, Naruto said as he twirled his can before slamming it down in front of him and leaned on it with both hands while smirking at Sasuke. It may seem difficult to believe, but I was born from nothing into nothing. I had no money and lost my mother when I was 5, so I had no one to raise me. Yet, even with the entire world against me, I fought on and conquered every challenge that came my way. You have done nothing more than coast off the name of your clan for as long as you have been alive, and even though they are dead, you continue to drag their name through the mud with your actions. You're insane if you think I'll pay that, exclaimed Sasuke. He was furious that Naruto had made such an unreasonable request of him. True, Naruto said, twirling his cane and holding it behind his back with both hands, but you don't really have a choice. Look at it this way. You can either be the richest Uchiha in existence, but also the last, or you can be the poorest one, and rebuild your clan into the way you want it to be. I don't care which you want because in all fairness, I could go either way. Either I get paid or I get to. Sasuke was at a loss for words because Naruto was telling the truth about the entire situation. However, the bright side of this deal is that you get to keep your clan houses as well as all of your family's jutsu because, unlike your clan, I don't steal the hard work of others using those eyes of yours. How can you say that when you have literally stolen my brother's eyes? Actually, I can, Naruto said with a chuckle, because in all honesty, I only use these eyes when I perform surgery because they allow me to see things that the untrained eye is incapable of seeing. Sure, I stole his eyes, but at least I am using them for a good cause instead of copying others' styles. But to bring this point home, this is a one-time offer, and if you choose not to pay what I demand for your ability to sire that. And how am I to know that you would do as you said if I pay you? I am appalled, sir, said Naruto as he held his chest in mock pain. I am a doctor, and as such I take my job very seriously. To state otherwise is quite a mistake, and as such I am tempted to say to hell with my offer and destroy your balls here and now. Wait! Shouted Sasuke in worry that Naruto would follow through with his threat, I'll pay you what you ask. So it's a deal then? Smirked Naruto, holding out his hand in an open palm. Faye took out a scroll and unrolled it, and Sasuke noticed that it was blank. Naruto took out a small vial of blood, crushed it in his fingers, and placed his bloody hand on it. The blood left his hand and swirled onto the scroll, forming a contract that went exactly as written. If you agree, then simply sign here. Do you have a pen to sign it? Asked Sasuke, who fairly freaked out to see a contract made out of the blood of someone. Oh yes, Naruto said as he pulled one out, right here. The contract states the deal exactly as I have said it, but be warned that when the due date comes and payment is not delivered, your life is mine to do as I wish. And allow me to paint exactly how that would go. I will remove your balls once more, this time destroying them so there is no chance of getting them back. Then I will remove your eyes. Slash up your face in a manner that will scar you beyond. I'll pay, said Sasuke as the color in his face disappeared as he heard what Naruto would do if he didn't pay. He then took the pen offered and signed his name on the line where it was supposed to go. Naruto made it disappear with a wave of his hand and the door to his operating room appeared beside them with a click of his fingers. Well, if you would kindly step through this door, we can complete this entire operation in 15 minutes, and you will have until the end of the Chunin exams to pay me in full. And, as he promised, he replaced Sasuke's balls within 15 minutes of sending him on his way. Naruto made his way back to his hotel room on his own, a smirk on his face. Naruto had done exactly what he had promised. He had returned Sasuke's balls to the condition they were in before he took them from him in wave. What he never told Sasuke was that he was sterile from birth and that replacing his balls would not help him have children in the future. Sure, Naruto could have easily fixed it, but he wouldn't on the account of the hell Sasuke put him through as a child. The asshole had literally used his freshly awakened Sharingan against him and had tested its genjutsu abilities on him to feel such great sorrow at the loss of his mother that he had taken up a broken piece of glass and nearly killed himself with it. Naruto looked back on that day and still wondered what had broken him free from that illusion so that he still lived, but in all honesty he was just glad to be alive today. Naruto couldn't help but laugh at the fact that Sasuke had so easily signed away his fortune, and the grin remained on his face as he smacked into someone because he wasn't paying full attention to where he was going. Sorry about that, Naruto apologized, taking his hat off and placing it on his chest as he respectfully bowed. My mind was elsewhere at the time. No worries, young man, an older male voice said, but then the voice changed to one of surprise. Wait a minute. Are you the surgeon of death known throughout the lands? Why yes, I am, Naruto said as he replaced his hat on his head, and you would be. Holy shit. Naruto couldn't help but shout that last bit because he had not expected to run into this person of all people. Jiraiya the Sannin was standing right in front of him. Whoa there kid, said Jiraiya with a bit of a nervous chuckle. He had dealt with fanatical fans of his Icha books in the past, and if this ended up like any of those other times then he would have to make a quick run for it since he was not going to end up tied up in some random guy's basement again. Of course, he got away, but dear Kami that day haunted him. Sorry about that, said Naruto as he rubbed the back of his head sheepishly since it was a bit embarrassing to do that. It's just a surprise to see you of all people here. I am a fan of your book, and if it is not too much to ask would you please sign my copy? Sure thing, kid, Jiraiya said, his own smirk now adorning his face because he liked meeting his fans who wanted his autograph for his work. He took out his pen to sign what he thought was another Icha book, but he came to a halt when he saw what was actually presented. Instead of an Icha book, there was a reasonably well-preserved copy of his first book, The Tale of the Utterly Gutsy Shinobi. This is my favorite book, Naruto stated proudly. My mother used to read it to me every night, and she even named me Naruto after the main character because she knew I would make a name for myself in the future, and damn was she right. Jiraiya took the book from Naruto's grasp and burst into anime tears. This was his first book he ever wrote, but it never sold well and because of that he went on to write Icha instead which sold far better. To finally meet someone who appreciated his first published book was heartwarming to him. He signed it with a smile on his face, which then Naruto took it back and thanked him for it. Thank you very much, Naruto said before handing over the book, and as a proper token of my appreciation for this amazing book, I am offering you a one-time offer at a significant discount of any surgery of your choice that I can perform. I would say free, but materials cost money, and I can't get some of them for free. Well, that's nice of you, kid, Jiraiya said, but I don't really. Wait a sec. What's on your mind, my good man? Naruto asked, a grin on his face. Well, there is one thing I'd like to inquire about, but I'm a little embarrassed to do so. Ah, Naruto chuckled, I know exactly what you want, and there is no need to be embarrassed about it. Many a man has come to me to fix that very problem, and I have done so to all who pay me what is owed. Now I charge my how much I need to enhance it, so just how much do you want it to grow? Wait, asked Jiraiya in surprise since he didn't actually expect Naruto to say he could fix it. You can make it bigger? Yes, I can, Naruto replied with a click of his finger. The door to his operating room once again appeared next to him. There are a few tests that need to be run to determine the maximum length your body can handle, but the end results are well liked. How much will this set me back? Like I said, it depends on the length change, but you're getting a steep discount, so there's no need to worry. Now follow me and I'll perform the few tests required to get you on your way to pleasing the ladies. Jiraiya could only cry more anime tears as he heard those words and walked through the door as instructed. What neither of them realized was that they were being watched from the rooftops. This person was none other than Kushina Uzumaki herself, as the boy had piqued her interest. Her daughter had told her about what had happened on the bridge in Wave, and how he had referred to Naruto as his sister, which made no sense given that she was an only child. Kushina had agreed with Minato's logic, believing that the man was just trying to mess with her by saying that. But now the boy was here, and her thoughts changed as she had seen him walking the streets by himself. She saw him go to the grave of a woman who he called his mother and saw as the tears flowed from his eyes. And the more she observed the boy, the more she couldn't deny his resemblance to Minato. So soon she would seek the boy out herself and get the answers to these questions that were forming in her head.
That's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.